Oh, and the wind wants to pick up right now. That's so lovely. That is so lovely. So if you kept up with the news to any extent, you'll very easily realize that the unemployment rate in the US is terrible right now. I'm seeing posts and articles talking about how there are now more unemployed people in the country than there actually are jobs in the country. Even from my own experience, I recently went to a job fair and the amount of people that were there was kind of alarming. The reason I bring all this up is because I just kind of want to talk about like what led me to being unemployed. It's now, damn, bro, it's now September. So tomorrow I will have, or no, actually, not even tomorrow. I have officially been unemployed for 5 months. 5 months. The job that I was employed at was the one that I'd been working for the longest in my adult life. And I just want to talk about what led me to eventually being pretty blatantly forced out of that position. Also, sorry if you like hear wind and nature and stuff. I'm on my real unemployed shit right now, in that I am going for a walk in the park at like 9 a.m. Let's talk about the longest job that I have ever worked and how I was forced to leave there, not really by my own volition. For context, I've recorded this video 4 times, and every time I record it, there's just something off about it that I'm not the biggest fan of. So please bear with me if I'm rambling a little bit. This is more of just like a kind of virtual diary sesh, I guess, because I don't want this job and the things that happen to me at this job be just like a blip in the radar of my life and then be gone. I want to have some kind of documentation of it, maybe for future self, just to know, hey, this is what you put up with before. Never put up with something like this again. Let's go all the way back to, I want to say, late 2021, mid to late 2021. I was doing full-time photography for this photo studio, taking school pictures and doing like sports pictures and things like that. And in that time, the owner of the studio really grew to like me. And when the season actually started to end, he came to me and told me, hey, we really like you, want to keep you around, but there's not going to be any photography going on for a while. You can either work customer service and answer phone calls from parents asking about kids' pictures and retakes and things like that, or you can go help out the photo lab that we normally work with. They normally need help this time of year. They're busy, so those are your options if you still want, somewhat consistent hours. I'm not a big customer service person. I didn't want to talk to a bunch of angry parents all day, so I went with the photo lab. And the first red flag that I should have knew right off rip, and this is just a cautionary tale for anybody looking for work, anybody who has not been employed before. This job wanted me, the owner specifically, when I went up there to talk to him, wanted me to start the day I went up there. That's not a good sign. A lot of the time, if a job is hiring immediately or day of, it's because they are desperate and need people, and they will exploit you and your labor and your time. I promise you. I am a walking embodiment of that meme of that friend who's always working a different job or has 4 different jobs, whatever it is. That's been my life before. I have worked so many different odd jobs and so many different lines of. So when I started working at this photo lab, it was just a packer job. I was packing pictures into envelopes. The envelopes would go into a box, and the box would either be shipped to the school or the photo studio would pick it up because some of their stuff they would hand deliver. And that was my life for a while. Coming to work, pack jobs, and rinse and repeat 8 hours a day, and it was pretty easy for a while. So as I started to get better at packing jobs and they started to realize that I was more and more reliable, they started scheduling me more and they started asking me to do more. It started with helping with shipping, where me and the guy that I used to help, let's just call him Jay would type in all the information, and I would do things like get the boxes ready, tape things, get them on a cart, get them pushed up to our front counter, things like that. And that was okay for a while. Then it started to progress more towards like helping with unloading deliveries, helping sort paper inventory and rotate paper inventory, and like all things. Sidebar, plights of a big nigga here. When you're the biggest person somewhere, you are just looked to like do any physical labor, any task that requires you to lift something more than 20 pounds. People just look at you as like, you got it, right? And it's like, in hindsight, yeah, but that gets annoying sometimes. They started to like me. I was pretty reliable. It was an easy job. Stuck with it for a while. And I'd say about after a year of me being there, they asked if I wanted to work full-time on the computers. And what that would entail, or at least what I thought it would entail, was things like editing pictures, some customer service, like customers calling in, asking about their orders and ship times and things like that. But I really thought the job was going to be mostly editing and things of that nature. So I started getting trained full-time. And another red flag that I should have realized was part of the reason I got hired on full-time. One was because I have experience with editing software, editing photos, color correction. It was my bag for like 6 or 7 years. But also because 2 of the long-term employees there were both on the way out. So at this point, I figure let's talk a little bit about the dynamic at work and how things were and the things I started to discover working there full time. This was a very small staff, very small contained staff. On any given day, maybe on a good day, it was like 8 of us there. And we would all do different things. We would have our packers, we would have people who were working on editing jobs, we would have people who were making physical media, things like buttons and magnets and all the little things that your school would sell for school picture day. And if there's 8 of us there, at least 4 people there were related to the owner. And that was another red flag that I soon would realize. It was the owner's 2 in-laws and his wife, and then sometimes one of his kids' girlfriends, his like oldest kid's girlfriend. And they would come in and help, which, would be appreciated. But I would soon come to realize that having them there was more of a burden than a blessing, to be honest. Part of it, though, definitely was none of them knew anything about anything we did on the computers. They wouldn't really assist customers like that, or if they did, they would only be able to help them so much before they had to come get me or one of my other coworkers who worked with everything. And also, they were a little racist. So yeah, red flags compiling. Another thing that happened as I started to get trained more on the computers was I started to get trained more on everything. I started to learn how to make invoices. I started to learn how to billing customers, making spreadsheets in Excel. I got to a point where, again, plights of a big nigga, unloading shipments by myself. And these were big paper shipments, because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize with a photo lab is these are big industrial printers. These printers are the size of a sedan. We got the 2 printers, 3 printers actually, but the real hazard, if you want workman's comp, is this machine right over here. They took real paper and also real chemicals, which is another thing that I eventually learned how to do, was mix chemicals in these big vats and barrels and pump them into the machines. And I'm gonna let some pictures that I'm gonna post speak for themselves, but OSHA would not be happy with this place. Now you already know any good photo lab is gonna have the Saw themed chemicals room with the hook. Okay, this is editing bay Ty, and I kind of left out like the crux of what the workday would be like at this place and what a typical open to close day is like. Pretty much we had these small kitchen timers that would be set up on all the printers. Depending on the printer, every 5 to 7-ish minutes, someone would have to get up and shut off one of these timers and clear the pictures that came out of the printer off of the rack that it came onto. If you don't do this, the printers start to get jammed because the pictures stacked too high and they were old and didn't have like an auto clearing tray or anything like that. And the ones that did only really worked for small like 5x7 pictures. 8x10s, which pretty much everybody is getting, and we printed almost everything on 10-inch paper. Pretty much just imagine your day, whether you're helping a customer, unloading a shipment, editing pictures, talking to another coworker about another job that needs to be done. Every 5 minutes, a kitchen timer is going off, and one of y'all has to stop what you're doing, get up, go clear it, and then come back. And that's the entire day from open to close. I swear it got to the point where I remember I was watching a episode of Hell's Kitchen, I believe, and I heard one of the timers go off, and I like looked over my shoulder because I'm like, where the fuck is that coming from? That aside though, I started learning everything and eventually got to the point where I was one of the most reliable people there. I would get all the machines started up, and then people would start just coming in through the morning, and that was life for like 2 years. And in those 2 years, I quickly learned that the owner, kind of an asshole, if I'm being real, and it was through a multitude of things. A lot of it would be his tone with people. He would never really yell. He would just get this like very nasty, snarky, like you're dirt beneath my feet kind of tone, and it would just make interactions with him hard. This was accentuated by the fact that I want to say 1.5 to 2 years of me working there, bro got into a major motorcycle accident that fucking scrambled his shit. I've talked to quite a few homies and professionals that work in psychology, as therapists, as counselors. All of them have said that they think he has a traumatic brain injury that he is probably not addressing, and it destroyed his memory. It got to the point where he would think he would tell someone something and didn't. He would, and that would work in both ways. He would think he would tell you about a job that needs to be done today and tell you like 2 hours before it needs to be done, like, hey, is this done yet? Or opposite side of it, you would tell him something like, hey, I need this, or hey, we need to order this, hey, we're low on this. He would say, okay, I'm gonna order it, I'm gonna handle it, and then days would go by and he would forget. And then it would come to, oh, now we're out of this thing, and now it's our fault for not telling him, even though we would tell him. Speaking on the work dynamic too, I was the only other guy there, and it was maybe like 5 to 6 women that we worked with. Aside from the people that were related to him, I love and adored my coworkers. They were some of my favorite people to work with. If any of y'all are watching this, you know that I love you and I hope you're doing well. The owner, to put it very bluntly, did not respect women, does not respect women. And I'm not a man should do this, a man should do this kind of dude. But I was also raised to have very high respect for women, femmes, and the way he would talk to my coworkers would infuriate. And it wasn't just the way he would talk, but the way he would act. He was so anxious. He would go over to the photo studio that we worked with and talk to the owner. Depending on the studio owner's mood, he would come back and take it out on us. If something was late or didn't get there the day it was supposed to, he would be pissed, come to us asking a million and one questions. To be honest, it was just a really unfair, stressful, anxiety-ridden work environment. His family was also no better. Remember how I mentioned that they were racist? I had an interaction with his mother-in-law before where we were playing Erykah Badu on like our computer speaker that we had hooked up, just because it's the job itself, you would pretty much be doing your own tasks and just convene with people to make sure certain things matched up with each other or certain stuff was getting done, but you really didn't have to work directly with people. So we would be doing our own thing, listening to music, and we had Erykah Badu, I believe we had like On and On playing, and we're chilling, and his mother-in-law comes out of the room that they pack in to be like, what is that? What are you listening to? I hate rap. I will never forget her saying hate rap 3 times. Hate specifically 3 times. That sat so wrong with me for so long. That would also not be the first nor the last microaggression I would go through there. But if I had to name all of them over a 3.5-year course, we would be here for a while. Just know these were pretty tone deaf, middle America white folks that really didn't know a lot about people of color, black culture, because they were very ignorant. Fast forward to this year, and the owner decides he wants to revamp the place. We got that good tile, protecting us from whatever kind of mold and asbestos. It's just another day in paradise, right? Throughout this video, I will have pictures of the lab and little glimpses of our work conditions so you can understand why this place needed a revamp. In that, he decided to take pretty much all of the main employees who were there mostly full-time out to a lunch, pick our brains a little bit, see what we like about the place, what we don't like about the place, what we think needs to change, what we think about his ideas. And I was pretty open to that, to be honest, because I, in my entire time working there, never really had a sit down with him. We didn't get any kind of yearly reviews or you're doing well here. He would sometimes tell us things like, oh, good job doing this or whatever, but those were very far and few between. Honestly, a lot of the time it would be more of a thank you for getting this done out of us saving his ass on something that was about to be fucked up, whether it was about to get shipped late, whether it was a big job that we didn't think we could get done in a day and we did. We came in clutch for dude so often, it's unbelievable. He takes me to this restaurant and we start talking, and I had an entire list of things that I wanted to talk to him about. I'll post the list, take a look at it and hopefully see, these were some of my talking points and things like that. I spoke to him pretty honestly. It was him and his wife, and because they're both the owners, and I told him I really don't think that you value us like that. You don't value the women that we work with, even though they do more than me, and you treat them like dirt. I told him about my feelings about his mother-in-law, which also, just another sidebar, having to explain microaggressions to people who have never faced them is a task, to say the least. I just laid it all out. I told him I'm very unhappy working there. I told him, something needs to change, and he, at the time I thought at least, heard me out pretty well. For a couple weeks, he was better, but that was only for a couple weeks, maybe a month if I really want to give him grace. Then March comes, and March was my birthday. March is my birthday, yay. And I got very, very sick right around my birthday. I was sick probably from like the last week of February until maybe like the 20th of March, like somewhere late in the March. It wasn't COVID. It was, if I remember correctly, it was like a combination of different like respiratory or like viral infection combined with the flu, but not COVID. I tested for COVID multiple times and it wasn't that. So I was out of work for a while, and I wanted to, try and make up some hours with my PTO. So I asked him to put some of my PTO on some of the days that I missed so that I could, make money to pay rent and shit. And not only did he not do that, but there was another error with my check. And we got physical checks for context of this whole story. The entire time I worked there, by the way, never had direct deposit. There was a day where I left out of work early, 1 or 2 days where I left out of work early, where I thought I was okay enough to work and I just wasn't. And I had about 10 hours overtime that I wasn't supposed to have. Now, the way I found out that I had some kind of respiratory infection was because I went to the emergency room. I'd been sick for so long in March and it wasn't COVID that I was starting to get worried, and I had never been sick like that before in my life. So I went and got myself looked at. And as I'm in the emergency room waiting to be looked at, I get a text in the morning saying, first off, before even getting a text from him, I texted our work group chat saying, hey, I'm not going to be in today. I'm sick as fuck. I don't know what's going on, but I need to figure it out. Sorry guys, but I don't want to get you sick. Everybody was understanding of that and wished me well, except for him. He texted me hours later asking, care to explain this, provided with a screenshot of my hours that I was not supposed to have. And that pushed me over the edge. I had been so irritated with him up to this point. Keep in mind, by the way, my patience normally is pretty high. I take great pride in the fact that I'm a pretty patient person. And I was just fed up at this point and sent him a pretty fair text. He thinks I was cursing him out, but I'm going to post a screenshot so you all can see exactly what I said. It hurt pretty bad considering like all that I did for the place, despite not liking him or his family. The big reason I stayed at the job so long was because my coworkers were so solid. I knew they had my back if I forgot something, messed up with something. I knew that they had me. So after accusing me of purposely not having my correct time, he asked me to change it. I went into our app that we would clock in on and went to change it, saw it change on my end. But at the time we had started using a new desktop version of the app, and the two are supposed to talk to each other, but for some reason the hour change I made didn't reflect. So, and again, keep in mind, we get paper checks and he does payroll. He gave me a check that he signed with the messed up hours on it. I then went and picked it up on my day off because I needed to buy medicine and pay bills. Basically, I get called in to have a meeting with him and his wife. And also one of my other coworkers, we'll call her C. It's to give me a write-up. The first write-up in the company's history, or at least of him owning it. He's owned it for like 15 something years, and this was the first write-up in company history with me. One of the best people, but it's cool. It's whatever. And it was basically to say that I was like rude and that I have all these I had warnings about things previously because I cashed my check with hours that he approved. I'm getting the write-up. And I was livid during this. I was really heated. I tried to keep my composure because I wanted to talk to him about it. Him and his wife, when I got to explaining why I needed to pick up my check early, him and his wife, specifically his wife, would tell me, because here's the thing, this meeting got into a back and forth to the point where I had to tell them how much each one of my bills were, and how for months, by the way, we had all been talking about, or at least me and like 3 or 4 of my other coworkers, how we don't make enough money, how we were living check to check. And this leads to, after I tell them how much, I am making and spending and bills, his wife told me, well, maybe you would have more money if you spent your money better and didn't have such an expensive car payment. I could not believe that she said this to me, and my coworker and homie C was there to hear it. I made him an offer because here's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make my punishment cutting me down from full-time 5 days a week, 40 hours, to 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And when I asked him, how long would I have to work this modified schedule, he said, well, we would have to see. Verbatim, he said, you're on a path, and you can either go down the good path and get back on full-time, or if you keep going down this bad path, we'll have to take some other measures, basically meaning fire me. I offered him in the moment, I was like, hey, I'll give you the money back that I wasn't supposed to be paid. You can take it out of my next check. You can even take it out of my PTO if you want to. But why are you going to cut the hours of one of your best, most reliable employees for, one, a mistake that you made during payroll and knew about because you told me about it previous to you signing my check? Why would you cut my hours? Especially at the time, we had just started getting spring proofs in. It was such a bad time to put me on part-time. But because his pride and ego wanted to, make him feel like the boss, I guess, he decided, no, you have to take these cut hours. This was on a Tuesday, and I was pretty pissed. So on the write-up, it said you're only supposed to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He's like, oh, you can finish your shift today. And I told him, actually, I just got a write-up saying I'm only supposed to work 3 days a week, and today is not one of those days. I'm going home. I, for a long time, was thinking about it, and I did not want to pull the trigger on it. I did not want to actually do it. But that night, I typed up my 2 weeks notice. Again, this was something I've been thinking about for a long time. I was very unhappy at this job. Seeing my coworkers unhappy didn't make me feel any better. And this was just something that I had thought about for a very long time, but didn't want to do out of fear of not having a job. To this day, I don't regret it, because since me quitting, which was at the start of April, 2 of my other coworkers have already left out of there, both of which were helping me with some of the stuff that I would do. And my other coworkers, just dividing the labor up so that one person isn't doing 6 things. All of us in our 20s, all of us, having bigger aspirations and dreams than like a small local photo lab. And to be honest, I don't regret it, because sometimes and maybe this is just like narcissistic to think, but I feel like sometimes those like homies and coworkers would not have left if I didn't leave first. And I'm glad that they did, because they're both going on to do better things now. Time goes on, the 2 weeks go on, all my other coworkers find out I'm leaving and are tore up and distraught about it. I didn't really think much of it until the last week, but I really was like someone that they relied on and someone that could get a lot done. And it's also just weird too, because being at a job that long, you really do start to care about the people you work with. And I felt so bad that they were going to be stuck with anxiety-ridden dude with his like mean ass family, like that really didn't care about us. The last day, by the way, my last day, he tried to play me out of my PTO, and I told him, nah, you told me before you didn't want to take those unaccounted hours out of my PTO, and now you want to try and do that? No, bro, give me my full shit. Don't even play with me like that. After a few back and forths, he eventually gave it to me. And I remember telling them, like, and also keep in mind, by the way, this entire time when we're having our last conversation, me, him, and his wife talking about my hours for that week, they could not look at me in the face. They were looking to the side of me. They were looking around me. They would only look me in the face if they were speaking, and they would only speak for very brief moments. I even verbatim told them, I don't think y'all will ever understand why I'm unhappy and why I need to get out of here, and how you choosing to cut my hours is forcing me to leave, because I cannot, at the time, I couldn't live off of part-time. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to find something else that somewhere that maybe appreciates me, but if they don't even appreciate me, at the very least, they'll pay me what I'm worth and I'll be full-time. Joke's on me, right? And here I am, 5 months later, still unemployed, still looking. This last little bit of the video, I really just want to talk about the things that I have been going through in the past few months and also things I've just been up to in looking for a job, and just some of the things I've learned. And maybe this is just easy to say from like an unemployed nigga perspective, but like I've learned that life is just not all about working. It's not all about the munyon. It's not all about like, there are so many other parts to people and what makes them whole that you need to nurture that I feel like a full-time job sometimes siphons from us. And me specifically, it was my creativity. I feel like when I was working at that job, I wasn't doing anything creatively that I really wanted to. You know, when I was forced out, I started to nurture those parts of myself again. I've been streaming on Twitch a lot more. I have been making a lot more art and getting into 3D art. And it has been very refreshing and very fulfilling to get back to those parts of myself that for so long I neglected. It really feels like being, in a way, it feels like having a full-time job was like sedating myself from the other things that make me feel like a person. It's almost like my head was underwater for a really long time, and when I was out of there and done with it, it was like my head popped up out of water and I saw like the entire ocean around me and I saw the entire world around me. Even though I'm 29 and restarting this late into my life is not fun, it feels less scary than when I had to just jump headfirst into adulthood as an early 20-year-old. Because I've gone through the trials and tribulations of depression and being broke. You know, some people ask me if I would ever go back to that job, and I don't think I would. Regardless, thank you for watching if you did, especially if you watched all the way to the end like this. And just take care of yourself. Make sure that you don't lose that part of yourself that makes you feel like you.